of AM. How about that? I made it. So, how's everyone doing? We are on, what is it, day 8? No, I think it's day 8. What does it say on my watch? Doesn't say on my watch. Oh, well, I think it's day 8. Yeah, it is day 8, because tomorrow is the final splurge, and tomorrow is the final live stream that I am going to do. Tomorrow is the final live stream I am going to do at this time. Okay, well, not the final one ever, but the final one of this particular series, which are all about the Idea Explosion Challenge. Hello, Christoph. Hello, Alex. So, I have a feeling that somebody might have done a setting wrong on my live stream, because I think this is very delayed. Hi, Rich. Hi, Gerald. So, I want to ask you a question. Kick this off by asking you a question. And the first thing is, hey, Louis. Hey, Bundy. Yes, the question is, what is the number one difference that you've noticed? Actually, no, it doesn't have to be a difference. What's the number one thing that you've been surprised about from doing the Idea Explosion Challenge? And if you've done splurging before, there still will be something that over the last few, week or so that you have actually noticed. Okay, so what is the number one thing? Hey, Quambo. Hey, Bart. Hey, Section 303. So, yeah, what's the number one difference that you've noticed? Not the number one difference. What's the number one thing that you've noticed that you've been surprised about during this process? Okay. For me, the number one thing I've noticed about this, I've been surprised about, is how much I've enjoyed these live streams. So, hey, Brian. So, what was the days? What I'm going to do after this is over is I am going to start doing regular live streams at this time on my Tuesdays and Wednesdays, which, if you're not in Australia or New Zealand, is Monday and Tuesday. Okay, so every Monday and Tuesday, if you're in the UK, US, Europe, Canada, over the western side of the world, then every Monday and Tuesday your time. If you're over on my side of the world, Tuesday and Wednesday at this time, I will be doing regular live streams. And then, what was the other one? Yes, on Thursday and Friday, I believe, my time, I will be doing them in my afternoon at 2 p.m. So that will be Wednesday and Thursday. God, it's very mind-melting, this time zone stuff. Yep. So I'm going to be doing them at regular times, but there will be two which are kind of more probably centre of the bullseye for the western side of the world, and there are two which are more centre of the bullseye for, depending on what your schedule is like, for the eastern side of the world. But if you're an early bird, even the ones on your Wednesday and Thursday, i.e. my Thursday and Friday, will work for you, because I think it's 5 a.m. in London and 6 a.m. in Europe at my 2 p.m. So, Justin, one of my masterminders. Good to see you on. How are you doing? I'm going to be talking to you in a couple of days, so I'll find out how you're doing. Anyway, so no worries, Gerald. Okay, so Quambo's saying the thing that he's been surprised about is that the fun, he said, in actually producing music while there's no pressure of quality. I feel more free and creative. Yes, indeed. What happens when you feel more free and creative as well? What tends to happen when you feel more free and creative? What tends to happen when you feel more free and creative is that you tend to write better stuff. Weird that, isn't it? Okay, Bundy. For me, it was the way I judged my work and was a lot more happy about it than usual. Okay, so here's another thing. Can you answer this question as well? As many people as possible. And if you're a lurker, please do start interacting in the comments. Okay, I know that as this thing grows, pretty soon it's going to be impossible for me to interact in such a kind of close way with you. So if you're a lurker and you're not commenting, now's your chance, because I'm going to be doing this regularly, which always means that these things grow. And pretty soon it's going to be like one of those like live chat comments things. And I'm trying to figure out ways that I can actually still interact with people when it gets like that. Okay, so. Yes, that's right, Crambo. I guess you make better music when you're more free and creative. Yeah, not always. Yeah, but that's part of it. It's okay. Section 303, being surprised at how easily stuff has come out just from messing about. Yes. Amazing, isn't it? Amazing what happens when you stop thinking so much. Again, I've been watching the Deadmau5 masterclass, and while his style of music is not the kind of music I like, although probably to someone like my mum it would sound like the same thing. For me, his style of music, it's not my kind of thing. But as a musician, he's great. He's really, really good. What he does, even though it's not my thing, is really, really great. And very early on in his thing, he says you've got to find a way to stop thinking. And what he does, what he says he does, is he makes himself really, really, really tired, so that he can stop thinking. But what I prefer to do is just develop our ability to notice thoughts and be aware of where we are in the process. So I'm taking a different approach, but it's the same thing. Don't think. Yeah, like the thinking can come outside of the process. Okay, and what was the thing I was about to say? Yes, Bundy said, for me it was the way I judged my work and was a lot more happy about it than usual. So yeah, in the comments, can you also say, what is it? What are you like to live with? Right? When you view your music as going badly? What are you like as a person when your music is going really badly? This is something I think people really underrepresent. Okay, because it used to be, before I did all the coaching that I've done and have now come back to making music and have this kind of have developed this way of building a more healthy creative process. With me, if I viewed my music as going badly, I was an absolute beep. I was just like awful. I was just really horrible, to the people around me, because I was just like like this, yeah. And I think this is something that we really kind of we do realise, but we don't think about so much. Yeah. Rich was surprised at how easy and fun slamming ideas down is when not worried about quality. Yeah. Gerald has learnt that he needs to go back to day one. Why is that, Gerald? Oh, Samuel says, the style splurge is flabbergasting to me. What a great word, flabbergasting. Yes, it is flabbergasting. So why do you think it's flabbergasting, Samuel? Alex, definitely more enjoyable with less pressure. Hey, what is the point? I mean, this is what I believe. What is the point of us spending most, and it is spending in this case, most of the process of getting to a result in a state of anxiety, pain, fear, and frustration? Now, that's not to say that those emotions don't occur no matter what happens. Those are features of the creative process. But we have to bring into our creative process, and the easiest place to do it is at the start, a a lightness of touch, a fun, a childlike kind of, woo, just laugh at ourselves and just have a bit of a laugh. Yeah. Now, I'm really serious. I'm really serious about making music. Yeah. But that means I need to bring in some kind of elements of fun to it in order to do what my seriousness about it wants. Yeah. Yes, that's right. Dead mouse. Oh, yes. So for anybody who is wondering how you splurge with a mouse, watch the Dead Mouse masterclass. Job done. Okay, it's right there. Yeah, he's like, I don't know, yeah, but that, yeah, well, I know, yeah, it's like that. Okay, so he splurges with a mouse. Okay, Louis. Okay. I read a pretty recent Aphex Twin interview where he mentioned trying not to think at all while making music too. Yeah, while making music. Yeah, you make the music without thought, you come out of it, that's when you think. Yeah. Yes, exactly. When your music's not going well, you feel down, you're grumpy, you're not very nice to your loved ones, you have arguments. Yeah. Yes. Yes, there we go. Albert Einstein quote. Although I'm always concerned about quotes being attributed to Einstein. It's like Einstein and Oscar Wilde and Pablo Picasso seem to have loads of quotes attributed to them. I never know whether they're true. But anyway, I'm going to go on face value here. Play is the highest form of research. There you go. Okay. Sarbolx is saying, sorry for murdering your name. If I have about 100 old projects, most of them are 8-bar loops, how would you suggest reusing them to splurges? I wouldn't suggest reusing them for splurges exactly. They are probably what I would describe as being splurges. They would go, so when you get to day 11, you'll see there's a kind of overview of the basic automatic music machine, which is the full system, which I teach in the Leap, and I've given you a basic overview because I recognise that some people aren't going to be able to do the Leap because it's definitely a commitment, that's for sure. So I've given you a video overview of the next 5 stages and how it goes through. So what I would suggest you do is bringing in one at a time those old ideas into your machine, but probably at the next column. I'll just show you now. So this is the full automatic music machine. So here's the splurge column, and here's all of the splurges I have been doing. Yeah. So there's the scary emails one, there's Mike Monday, and there's okay. Oh yeah, and I had an idea for some of the live streams that I'm doing. I won't do it all the time, but what I might do is find a way of setting up some kind of Dropbox folder. And what I might do is get you to upload things into that Dropbox folder. And what I will do, just little sound files, yeah. And what I will do on some of the splurges is just randomly select one of those sounds and just do a splurge with one of them. Because I think that would be quite interesting. Sounds or parts or whatever you decide to put in there. Because I think that would be quite fun as well. And that would be a form of a discovery process. So yeah, so here are the splurges. I don't know why I thought of that. Oh yeah, I thought of that because you guys have been naming seem to have been naming my splurges. So this one was suggested by and Rich suggested both of these, I think. So this is the second stage of the machine, discover. Yeah, so Sarbox, when you get to that video, which is on day 11, which is the overview of the automatic music machine, what I would suggest you do is don't put 100 in here, yeah, but one at a time, just put them in here, and then you'll finish them through the machine. So splurging is just splurging, so you want to treat those 100 ideas as already having been splurged. Yeah. So Manuel. In my case, I struggled a bit to recreate some elements of my references. Right, okay, so Manuel, that's not the Yeah, okay. So maybe I ought to have been clearer about that. So I apologise. I will note that down in my mind as an update to make to any future Idea Explosion Challenge program. Oh yeah, and the other thing I wanted to say is that you can do the Idea Explosion Challenge program as many times as you want. At this stage, I don't know how long this is going to last, but at this stage, I'm going to be running classes like this. I mean, with actually doing 11 days of live streaming about the challenge program 4 times a year. So the way it will go is there'll be an idea explosion challenge program, and then the leap, next, kind of back to back. So we'll start with the idea explosion challenge, and then those who are in the leap or want to join a leap will be after that. Yeah, and but you can come through the Idea Explosion Challenge program in this as many times as you want. Also, the content isn't going to disappear. I've had quite a few emails, people asking me, is the content going to disappear? No. But please don't use that as an excuse not to do it. Yeah? Now's the time, remember. Now is the time. You are never going to have, well, depending on who you are. Once again, gratitude, and my heart goes out to all those people who are probably working way, way harder because of the lockdown and the crisis, who are kind of putting their own lives in danger by being out there and kind of keeping the supply lines open and helping people in that sense. But if you're not one of those wonderful people who I'm immensely grateful for, then you probably have. I mean, I don't have more time, but I'm not one of those people. But if you are somebody who has more time, there has never been a better time to actually focus on getting your creative saw sharpened, if you like, and getting a healthy creative process. So yes. So anyway, what was I saying? In my case, I struggled a bit to recreate some elements of my references since they are very different from the music I make. So you're not really trying to recreate them exactly. So in fact, Manuel, why don't you let me know what they were? What are the references? Okay, and we'll see. So you don't exactly have to recreate them. You can, if you're finding it hard to recreate them, then you've got 2 options. You can either choose another one that you can recreate, or you can use them as a sort of starting point. Yeah, I don't ever. None of the rules that I put in these splurges are intended to make things more difficult. They're intended to make things more easy. Okay. So Samuel was saying the flabbergasting bit about the style splurge was maybe my choice of elements. I found it took me a real good while to figure out how to blend very eclectic styles, a bit like Van Halen meets Marvin Gaye. Yeah, so this is a really interesting thing. Why, I'm going to ask you a question, and everybody can answer. Yeah, why do you like things? What's the reason you like what you like? Where does that come from? Great, Manuel says, but I think I ended up with very fresh ideas. Okay, so here we go. So Manuel says, I make psytrance, inspired myself in some heavy metal fundamentals. All right. Okay. So, hey Maurizio. So let me just deal with the first thing, actually. I also think my exports ended up more empty in sounds. So what? I mean, first of all, I hope you haven't listened back to them, because that's a huge rule of the splurge. You don't listen back until the end of the program. Okay. But the other thing is, it doesn't matter whether it's empty in sounds, because this is just a splurge, right? You can just have one sound in a splurge and you will have splurged. Yeah. So you don't have to have everything in the track at any point until you need everything in the track. Yeah. It doesn't need to be full. In fact, empty in sounds probably means that each sound, if you did have a track that was empty in sounds, it would probably sound really, really good on a club sound system. Okay, yeah, even in trance, yeah, a psytrance, yeah. Anyway, so Manuel then says, I make psytrance and inspired myself in some heavy metal fundamentals. Okay, so one of the things So if you're thinking about heavy metal fundamentals, I mean, you know, one of the most fundamental things about heavy metal would be distortion, I guess. Yeah, is the use of distortion. So you could could have played around with that. That's something to think about. I mean, actually, I would say psytrance is probably fairly related to heavy metal anyways. I think it's actually quite close. I know that sounds weird and ridiculous, but when I think about it, it probably isn't. For various different reasons, which I'm not going to go into now. But it's actually probably quite close. Both in its, I mean, I'm not surprised you're into both of those things, because when I actually think about the musical structures and the way that various things happen, they're actually very close. So yeah, I mean, the other thing I've noticed about a lot of heavy metal is the kind of the production style and how things are put in a certain space. Yeah, and that is actually quite interesting as well. Quite often you'll hear things really, really wide out and then this other thing in the middle in heavy metal. That might be quite interesting to play around with in psytrance as well. Oh, good. Manuel, did not listen is just my idea. Well done. So, okay, so the reason for Brian, emotional connection. Mikhail, the music expresses feelings I'm attracted to. Mundi, illustrates feeling. Okay, Lucas, bing! Some of it may be familiarity, but what establishes the initial emotional connection, I'm not sure. Right, so I think what establishes the initial emotional connection is, in a sense, a familiarity, but it's going to be that, I mean, in a sense, in that it's going to be something called anchoring. Okay, so, you know, music is a very, very tribal thing, and you know, I can't remember who it was that said or where I read it or something, but apparently the music that you liked in a certain period of your life tends to be the music that there are, if it's not that music exactly, it tends to be certain things about that music that you then like for the rest of your life. And this is probably not true of everybody, because I specifically make efforts to listen as widely as possible, as often as possible, so that I don't get kind of hived into a thing. So I really, really make a kind of conscious effort to do that. But if you don't do that, you tend to like certain kinds of music from a particular area time of your life. I think that's because and it's the time of your life when you are most social, in terms of having the widest, you know, you're out all the time and you're having the widest kind of social connections being made, and in a sense the most hedonically fun times. And you're anchoring to certain kind of sounds and certain elements of certain sounds, you know. And even people that go on to, so maybe you used to like heavy metal and now you're into psytrance or something. Yeah, so as I said, those two forms of music, which may seem very distant, are actually in lots of different ways quite similar. Yeah, and there would be an example. Where your like comes from, what you like, is so much to do with familiarity. Yeah, it's so much to do with what you already know. Yeah. An instructive example here is how you become friends with anybody. Okay, so how you become friends with anybody has to follow these, or actually how you get to trust somebody has to go through these stages. First, you have to be aware of it. You have to have noticed it. Yeah. So first you have to be aware of it, the person. Yeah. Then you have to remember them. Yeah. So you have to know them. Yeah. Then through knowing them a number of times, or quite quickly, you get to like them. Yeah. And then once you like them, then you trust them. Now, I know some people, when you first meet them, you instantly like them, and you kind of feel like you can trust them, but that can happen very quickly. But that is the process, and it's kind of the same in music. I mean, I remember the first time, this was in 1989 or something. and I first went to a rave out in a field somewhere in the Oxfordshire countryside, and I'd never heard music like this before, and I was just like, what is this? And I had no frame of reference for it. It just sounded, it was repetitive, it was like punishing, it was brutal. I mean, it sounded quite brutal. I mean, back to it now, it sounds really happy, right? But I just had no frame of reference for it whatsoever. Yeah. And it wasn't, I mean, I don't even know if I liked it. I just didn't have the words to express what it was, right? But now it kind of sounds, now it's just kind of familiar. And there are certain things about it that kind of appeal to me, that I love. Yeah. So if that is true, if familiarity is, and I mean, I think if you look back honestly at your own, musical history, and I suggest everybody does this, yeah, and it's one of the reasons for doing the Star Splurge. If you look back at how you've kind of come to be the person who has the likes and dislikes that you have, it's so much about what group you were in, and what you perceived as another group, and what the kind of music they were into. And it's so interesting from my perspective, because I help people from who make folk music to death metal to hip hop to house, techno, all of that, drum and bass, dubstep, kind of everything. I mean, somebody got in touch recently, and he's an Indian classical player. Classical musicians. So somebody just came through the Leap who's, he writes music for TV and film. For full classical. He actually literally writes the music on paper. So all kinds of different musicians who I help, and it's really interesting how pop musicians as well, yeah, they all have this, not all of them, but a lot of them kind of feel that they're making the music that is serious, that is good. Even the pop musicians, yeah, who if you were, say, a techno musician, you might think, well, that's just throwaway stuff or whatever. It's like this is the really serious stuff. This is the stuff that really takes a lot of, and it's like, no, it's not like that at all. Basically, music is the reason that you like things, the reason you believe that this is proper music, and you've got this kind of, oh well, that's just whatever, is because of a tribal thing. And I'm not saying everybody here believes those kinds of things, but I certainly used to have that kind of unquestioning thought that the kind of music I was into was the serious stuff and everything else was rubbish. The us and them that goes on. So if that kind of familiarity and tribal element is where your like comes from, the act of bringing in other influences, distant influences, means that you're going to start making music that at first you don't have a frame of reference for. And the reason I'm talking about this is what Samuel says, is how to blend very eclectic styles. Yeah. So I'm not sure that you need to worry about that at first, because you don't have the frame of reference for it. Blending it may actually not be the thing that you initially want to do. This is what I do when I have disparate things that I put together. And what I'm going to do actually in the live streams after this idea explosion is I'm actually going to think of, because the ones I've got here are ones that I've kind of already kind of brought in and sort of know fairly well. So what I might do is actually think of some more distant ones and actually do it with those. But what I do is I just put them together, and I don't judge them. Again, you're not splurging, so you're not meant to be judging anyway. But I don't judge them for a while. I give myself time to become familiar with them. Yeah, because I don't have a frame of reference for these two things together. It's not that you want to immediately blend them, because what you may well be doing is just making them less effective. Yeah, and the contrast might be because you're just like, well, I don't know. I don't know. Does this work? Does this not work? I don't know. So you just kind of have to sit with it for a while and see that once you get over that kind of familiarity, actually, this is really great. Yeah. Because what you might be doing by thinking you have to blend them immediately and make them work, because, these are all interesting musical questions. How do you know whether it works or not, if that is true? If the familiarity has a lot to do with like? So anyway, I've been talking for a long time about this, but I'm really interested in this whole area about where our judgment comes from. Yeah. And what's the difference between a good piece of music and a piece of music you like? Because some people would say there is no difference, but there is. There has to be, because if there isn't, that would mean that all of the music you don't like is terrible, and that's not true. So anyway, it can't be true. Right. Anyway, I'm going to make some music. Let's make some music that we all can hate together. Right, so I thought a thought pops into my head, and I was like, what I could do with this Alberti bass. So the Alberti bass, if you haven't watched the video, the Alberti bass movement is you've got a triad, yeah. So let's just do a F minor first inversion as an example. So what first inversion means is that the root of the chord, so F minor is F, A flat, and C, yeah. And a first inversion, what's it called? I can't remember what it's called. Anyway, the one before the first inversion. Oh, come on, Michael. You've been doing this for years. I can't remember what it's called. Anyway, not usually, but the chord, the most obvious way of playing an F minor chord is to have the root note at the bottom. I think it's called the root chord. Sorry, music theory gods, for my brain wibble. So usually you have the F at the bottom. The first inversion, you're just moving the F, so the root of the chord, up one octave, so the A flat is at the bottom. Yeah, so that's the first inversion. Yeah, and a second inversion would be moving the A flat, yeah, the minor third of the chord up as well. So you're going, yeah. So they're all F minor chords. I think it's the root. Yeah, root, first inversion, second inversion. It doesn't matter what it's called. I know what it is, right? So let's just call it the wibble, right? So the wibble version is where the root's at the bottom. First inversion, second inversion. Anyway, so I'm going to use the first inversion of F minor, okay? And the Alberti bass starts with tonic, there you go, tonic triad. So, yeah, it is the root, yeah, sorry. Anyway, so I'm going to use an F minor first inversion. And an Alberti bass would be the lowest note of the triad. And I don't actually know if officially an Alberti bass has to have, no, I don't think it can't do. Anyway, one thing I do know is the Alberti bass movement. I have to look all this stuff up. Here I'm showing you my terrible music theory knowledge. But anyway, the Alberti bass starts with the lowest note of the triad, then it goes to the highest note of the triad, then it goes to the middle note of the triad, then it goes to the highest note of the triad. Yeah. Now, usually, you'd have, that kind of thing. I'm thinking, how about if I have a really, really slow, I know I've been going quite slow in general over the last few splurges anyway, but like a really slow one, yeah. So here's taking an idea and kind of seeing what you can do with it, yeah, because if you just take that simple, it's still the Alberti bass, but it's kind of done differently just by changing the speed, yeah. So I just thought I might do that as a starting point. So hello, Malteser. I really hope that I don't murder your name every time I say it. And just as a blanket apology. Do you know, I don't know, I've said this before, but do you know what my real name is? It's not Monday. It's Mukhopadhyay, which is a Sanskrit version of the name Mukherjee. I'm half Bengali and half English, in case you were wondering. Okay. Is that the right tempo? Okay. Okay. Didn't really have to do that twice, did I? Anyway. I'm just going to leave that. Oh, that's pretty good, isn't it? Look at that. Woo. Mike Monday. Getting his accuracy in. Look at that. Just the first note. Did I lose it at the end? That's pretty. That's not so bad. Not so bad. Woo. One of the things that it was interesting about the Dead Mouse thing, the Dead Mouse masterclass. And by the way, the reason I've subscribed to the masterclass, well, actually, I won't tell you the one of the main reasons I actually subscribe to them now, because there's something coming down the pipe which is quite exciting. But anyway, so one of the reasons I subscribed to the masterclass series wasn't just to watch Dead Mouse or to watch Timbaland or to watch who is it? Armin van Buuren. It wasn't specifically to find out what they have to say, although I'm very interested in what all of them have to say about music. It was just because one of the things you'll notice about, if you've done any training with me at all, is that it's not, I'll tell you my process, right, for creating new ways of looking at making music. I actually tend to look outside of music much more than I do inside of music. And that may well be because I've kind of been trained musically for many years. So it's not that I have nothing to learn, and that would be a ridiculous thing to say. I've got loads of stuff to learn. I mean, for one thing, what the first chord was called, if it's not going to be called Wibble. But it's just like I have a kind of grounding of an understanding in how music works, and I've been making music for years, so that probably means that I can look elsewhere. But I tend to look at how I don't know, cooking, chefs do things, how businesses do things, entrepreneurism, how politicians think. Different politicians are all different. I'm reading a book about the shipping container industry at the moment. And what I do is I just apply these different ways that people think about things. Software development. Actually, my automatic music machine. One of the things it came from was from a way that people develop software, which is called Scrum. It's one of the things it came from. Now, it isn't Scrum, but me learning about that, and I got really into it at one point. It's a way that people develop software and work together in teams. Was one of the things that made the automatic music machine possible. One of the many things, but one of the things. Spirituality, all sorts of different areas. The thing that you will get on the last day, some of you will recognise about how you listen to things, and that comes from somewhere else. And so, when why was I saying this? When I was watching the Dead Mouse thing, which is great, by the way. I mean, it's kind of, obviously a great music producer isn't necessarily a great teacher, right? But one of the things I found interesting about his particular thing was that he, and I'm not saying he's doing anything wrong in the slightest, at the end of the day, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? So he makes great music, even though it's not my thing. He makes great, he's very, very good at what he does. And it was interesting because he always said, well, I can't play the piano, so this is how I have to do it. And I always kept on thinking, but why don't you just, it wouldn't take very much. And also him learning the piano wouldn't mean that he would have to stop doing it the way he does it as well. But it wouldn't take very much to get good enough to actually do what you do on a keyboard. Yeah, it wouldn't take very much at all. And it was just a very interesting frame. And I think people often do that. They see themselves as some kind of fixed entity. Yeah, well, and it's like you can learn this. You can practice this. I mean, I've just played a part there. Yeah, and it wouldn't take very much to learn how to do that. Yeah, so Gerald saying, where do you find the time to do all of this? By saying no to lots of things. So I don't do social media. Mainly, probably. That's probably it. That's probably the one thing that's how. So where else are we? So I'm ready. Right, okay, back to here. What's going on? I wonder if just trying to think what I'm gonna do. If I speed this up by 2, so that'll be 148. Right, and then I make this half time. Where is it? Here. MIDI transform. Half speed, there we are. Missed it. Select an operator, I'll do it. There we go. Okay, so what I was doing there, in case you're wondering, is yeah, so what I'm doing is basically, so this is still the same tempo in terms of the piano, but what I wanted was a faster defam, a double time defam, so I had to speed that up, and I didn't want to change it on the multi-clock, because you can change the speed at which the thing goes, yeah, what's the word, the subdivisions that it's telling it, but I didn't want to do that because then you miss the because through this you can add shuffle, so I didn't want to half it, because you can't do shuffle on different subdivisions other than sixteenths, which is why I just did what I did. Yeah, I mean, the other thing is it's not just social media. So basically, I'm kind of a little bit of I really watch what I'm doing, and in terms of like what are the highest leverage actions I can take, and really what you say no to is more important than what you say yes to. So I say no to a lot of stuff, yeah, and I have to be really watchful of the things I'm saying yes to. So I always look at, and there's a lot of automation things that you can do, and also I employ people which is getting more challenging in the current economic environment, but I'm trying my best to keep that going. So I employ people to do things that I don't have to do. That's another thing that I do. So, right, defam time. Making sure that the ooh, I wonder, will this work? Let's see. VCF mod amount. So this is probably a bit dull, but I'm just trying to figure out if I can get something. Mix. This might not work. I wanted the LFO to make it go. Maybe I'll just record it. I'm going to record it. That's too long. That's probably too long as well, but I'll just do it there anyway. It's great, by the way, the dead mouse thing. Me saying that a great producer, like musician, isn't necessarily a great teacher. It's not meant to say it's bad or anything. It's not. It's great. As I said, I found myself nodding vigorously at many moments during it. I'm really looking forward to the others, but I think I'm going to watch what I'm going to watch next. What was the one we were talking about yesterday? I can't remember. One thing I do find about those masterclasses though is they're a bit more like a documentary than they are a training, if you like. It's a bit more. It's not really. Do you know what I mean? It's not kind of. But it's not bad. It's cool. It's just not quite. A course, right? An in-depth documentary, shall we call it? Right, are we good to go? I think so. I'll just do it anyway. So what I really like about the, I think that's actually fine, but let's have a listen. Let's see if it's in time. What I really like about the things like this is that, so if that was in the door, yeah, I just wouldn't have made the decision to change the note by twisting the knob. Yep, I would have like drawn it in, or done something like that. Now I've got recording. There's nothing I can do about that. Yeah, and what that has kind of done is create a kind of much more of an organic kind of change. So it's not changing regularly. And so it's almost like that. Is that right? Yeah. So that has kind of created something that I wouldn't have created if it was in a door. And that's what I like about things like that, is that it forces you, the limitation of not being able to control that up and down movement. I just didn't have the time to figure out how to do it with the LFO on here either. Means that you kind of do something that you wouldn't do usually. It's unique, Yes, the limitations of that thing are indeed its best asset. Yes, absolutely. So the other thing is what Lucas is saying. One positive aspect of this track challenge is my keyboard bashing is tighter now than it was when I started. Sure, absolutely. That's what I found too, by doing this all the time. Okay. Again, remember the, hang on, actually what I'm going to do is copy that. 1, 2. Oh, yeah, I've got to turn that on. Sound, workflow, control. I find the there's little taglines that I mean, I do them as well. So I'm not one to talk about them. I do find them quite funny sometimes. So the arterial one, your experience, your sound. What does that even mean? Anyway, sound. Let's go for some sound. Workflow. Control. Where are we? What am I doing? Come on, Michael. Concentrate. Get serious. So, I don't have a subwoofer in my studio. The reason being is that I haven't sorted, as you'll see, I haven't sorted out this room at all for, in terms of, what's it called? I haven't sorted out the room in terms of sound stuff that makes it, that's like kills all of the reflections and stuff. And I feel it would probably cause just as many issues as it fixed. So in order to hear the bass, and it's like you kind of, the more things you bring into a room which isn't treated properly and it hasn't been looked at properly, the more potential issues I think you're going to face. So what I tend to do to check the bass is I check on headphones, and also to actually finish the mix, I use a mix engineer and a mastering engineer to actually finish the final thing. So I get it sounding, so like this is how I want it to sound. But can you sort it out? So I don't have a subwoofer because I feel I don't need one at this point. Acoustic treatment. There you go. It's something that I need to get at some point. That would probably make the biggest impact of anything. Now I'm not going to use the preset rule in this. I'm going to find something that is vaguely in the. That'll do. It's very long though. What I worry about with that is it's going to cause the computer to wibble. Yeah. Let's try one that I have marked. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Capture. Interesting. I got a little bit into a reverie then. And I just have to also give a blanket apology for any poo faces that I do when I'm doing things like this. Particularly these sounds tend to create poo face situations. Yep, that kind of thing. So I apologise for that. There's nothing I can do about it though. It's just what happens. Okay, so We got something going down here right now. Turns down. Just want to be really. I need to hear the what's going on is I need to hear the piano more. This is quite loud. So we're now in a situation where I am feeling that I like this. Maybe not exactly like it, but I'm like, oh, this is something with basically the same elements that I've used multiple times, and it's got something about it that I've not found before, which is what is getting it's starting to twist my melons a bit. Okay, so now I've got to be careful not to fall into the quality thing for a different reason. Yeah, I actually find it easier not to fall into quality when things are terrible, or when I'm not into things like the last, I think the splurge yesterday and the splurge before that. You know, I find it quite easy. I'm just like, there, it's right. It doesn't matter. But when I'm like, oh, this has something going on about it, that's when I start to go tight, thinking. Yeah. So, so I've got to watch out for that. But one of the things I do need to do is I need to be able to hear this, because what's happened is, let me just explain the confusion. Is that you know, I was doing the change of the bass note thing with the frequency knob, yeah, because it's not regular, because it happens kind of randomly, just according to when I felt it, yeah, that's kind of confusing me as to where the chord changes, yeah, and because the piano is quite quiet, because the piano is quite quiet, I can't hear where the chord is changing, which is going to be a problem for when I'm putting other harmonic elements in. Okay, so that's what's going on at the moment. So because essentially, let me just let's have a little theory lesson, shall we? And apologies to anyone who doesn't need this. But, so what this chord, how do I've got to move this out of the way. Sorry, so it's a live streaming screen. All right, and I'm gonna, I don't know how many people read music, but anyway, it probably isn't helpful. So this chord here, yeah, A flat, F and C, yeah, is an F minor first inversion. Yeah, as I said, the A flat, which is the third of the chord, is at the bottom. That means it's the first inversion. Yeah. Now, just by changing this C here, which is the fifth of the F minor chord, to a D flat, yeah, this chord with two of the same notes, yeah, E flat and F, this chord now becomes D flat major. Okay, So if F minor is F, A flat, and C, yeah. If I change that top C to a D flat, well, that's now D flat major, yeah. So if we do it in the exact way that I'm doing it here, A flat, C, and F is F minor. Just by changing that middle note to a D flat, we have a D flat major second inversion. Okay, hope that makes sense. Yeah. So basically, these two, these two chords. I mean, we're still in F, I think. We're in F minor, but it's going between F minor and D flat major. Yeah. So let me just play it for you. Oh, let's just do it on the piano. It's easier, right? That's the two chords that are happening. Yeah. So I want to kind of make that clearer or do something with that movement in these parts here. In order to do that, I need to be able to hear the movement, which is why I've been turning things up and turning things down. Okay. Yes, let's say splurge one more time. Something like that anyway. I think I'm just going to leave it like that. Okay. Now something. Right. There we go. And I think what I'm going to do actually is I'm going to leave this one at that, because what's happening now, and I've noticed this before, is that I'm getting a bit confused. So one of the things that it's not that I'm getting confused. What is it? What is it exactly is going on? Yeah, it's basically, I don't know what to do next, basically. And this is an idea. This is enough of an idea for me to play with at some point in the future. And I think, or to listen to in the future. And I think if I try and put any more into it now, it kind of feels like I might take something away from it. I mean, I was already feeling that this was in danger of getting a bit too dirge-like for me. And so there was all sorts of questions coming into my head about, well, maybe I need to do less of this down here, and maybe that, and as soon as those kind of like, well, maybe I should change this, and maybe I ought to change that, and maybe that's kind of like an indication that the splurging needs to stop for me, just for now, so that I can just take a step back from it, because I'm kind of in it too much, if you like. So that is my splurge for the day, and I think I'm going to call this elegy. Elegy. I'm not sure that's how you spell elegy, but it is today. What was it? It was F minor, wasn't it? F minor. What was it? Well, it says it's 148, but it's kind of also 74. So. Let's put 74 to 74. Okay, so tomorrow is the last day of the Idea Explosion Challenge splurges at this time. Okay, and so yeah, so if you're not able to come at my 2 p.m. Where's my phone? I'm just going to see if I can tell you what time that is for other people. No, not easily. So, hang on, what would it be? 2 p.m. is 5 a.m. in London, and 6 a.m. just off the top of my head. 6 a.m. in Europe, and I don't know about LA. And New York. Sorry, those are the places I usually use. Yeah. So the day after tomorrow, it will be 2 p.m. my time. The day after that, it will be 2 p.m. my time. Tomorrow it will be the same time as this. But please remember that I am going to be continuing live streaming at specific times. I'll probably do more than that as well, kind of whenever it kind of takes me, whenever I decide to. But the scheduled ones are going to be my Tuesday and my Wednesday, 5 a.m. Yeah, which will be Europe and America and Canada, Monday and a Tuesday, and my Thursday and my Friday, 2 p.m. Yeah, in the future, and that will just continue. Okay. Okay, so Bundy's asking a question. Good question. I have a remark. When I'm about to give a name to my splurge, I was thinking maybe it could give me a remember feeling when it's time to direct listen, and twist my opinion of it. Could it really influence my judgment? Yes, it could. It definitely could. Which is why I usually give my splurges sort of. I mean, this one's slightly different. This one's kind of like, it sounds like an analogy, I think. Anyway, I'm not quite sure what an analogy, the official thing that analogy is. So yeah, so I've just called it that because that's just the name that popped into my head and it seemed appropriate. So yeah, it could, but as Mikhail quite rightly points out, so could the cat looking at you, or a dream you had last night, or the fact that you had an argument with somebody the day before yesterday, or something that you're not even aware of, or like the pain in your toe, like all of this stuff that is that we are subject to, most of which we are unaware of, yeah, has an effect on the judgment of your music, all of it. Yeah, so it's not exactly that you can actually listen to your music and remove all of those things that have an impact on you. All you can do is recognize that is the case. Yeah, that so much of your judgment, another example is what we were talking about before, familiarity. Yeah, that has an impact on the judgment of your music, which isn't actually about whether the music is good or not, right? It's about something else. Yeah, it's about your past. Yeah, so all of these things have an impact. How you feel when you're listening to it, just so many different things have an impact on your judgment of the music. So it's not that you can remove all of these things and then be able to listen to the music in 100% truthful way. What you can do is you can recognize that this is the case and have a much lighter, more flexible relationship with your judgment, and recognize that it's not necessarily right in any given moment, in any single moment, and that includes when you're direct listening to it. But what we can definitely say, that there are certain situations and certain states of being and certain ways of listening to music which are going to be more objective. Yeah, one of them is that when you are out of the process, yeah, and listening to an audio file rather than it being out of the DAW. And it's not just that, but that's one of the things. When you're out of the process and you can listen to it when you're not actually making it, that gives you some measure of objectivity. Yeah, that doesn't mean it's right in that moment, but it just means you have a different perspective. So now you've had two perspectives: one when you were making it, and one when you weren't making it. Yeah. And let's face it, most people aren't going to have made your music, right? So you're going to be actually closer to being a listener, yeah, which is a valuable perspective to have. So now you have two perspectives, if you actually remember making it at all, of course. So now you have two perspectives. Neither of them are necessarily correct, but both of them are valuable. So they can go into the melting pot of your overall judgment, yep. And then what is key is, without over listening to it, without listening to, oh God, I need to get all of these different perspectives, so I'm going to listen to it 100 times in 100 different places. That wouldn't be a good thing either, because one of the things that also affects your judgment is how much you've listened to it. Right. So we're in this very, very challenging situation as music makers, particularly solo music makers, that we cannot, while our judgment is what allows, what tells us to make progress. At the same time, we cannot believe that judgment. It is massively unreliable in any given moment. Yeah. So the solution is to recognize that, first of all, have a lighter relationship with our judgment, not believe it in every single moment. I mean, when you think about it, how often has your opinion changed about the same piece of music? Very often, if you're honest. If you really look, it's changing all the time. But for some reason, we don't notice this. And furthermore, we believe ourselves in this moment more than in the past moment. Often I will say to people, they're like, oh man, I just don't like this anymore. I'm no longer excited by this. I'm like, well, when were you excited about it? Yeah, I was. Like when? Last week. I said, how excited were you? I really loved it. And I'm like, well, so who's right? The you now or the you then? And they're like, oh, I don't know. And it's like, we always prefer our judgment now, forgetting that when we were our past selves, we believed our judgment then. It's like, no, I mean, it's bordering on I don't know, it's just complete. It doesn't make any sense. Because what we're basically saying is, I'm right now, and every other judgment in the past was wrong, and every other judgment in the future is going to be wrong too. It's like, come on, folks, think about it. How can that be true? Yeah. So what we have to do is recognize that, even with an unchanging thing, so a piece of music on Spotify, I can guarantee you that nobody has gone onto my Spotify profile, and uploaded different pieces of music. Like, say the thing that's the top of my profile, When the Rain Falls, right? That piece of music has not changed. Nobody's gone up and changed it. Yeah. My opinion of that music, I mean, I wrote it in 2005, 4 or something. I can guarantee you that piece of music has not changed. But my opinion of it changes all the time. Yeah, I am the thing that is changing, and it will change all of the time. Yeah. Sometimes I'm like, oh yeah, this is great. And sometimes I'm like, oh. Yeah. And that is the reality. So first thing we have to do is accept that. Yeah. And then we have to learn to work with it by just having a lightness of touch with our judgment, and recognizing what the things are that will reliably affect our judgment in a big way. So in terms of the naming, if you named the track, "This is absolute crap and I hate it," now that would have a kind of pretty big impact on how you listen to that piece of music. Yeah. Confirmation bias is a big thing here. Yeah. And so what I tend to do is I either name things. Let's go back to the names I've got here. Ideas are everywhere. Tester, door don't matter. Lower the bar. Mistakes are your best coach. Just do it. Not a waste. Mike Monday, scary emails. Yeah, and this one's called Allergy. Yeah, so they're not. None of them are judgmental things. Yeah, they're just kind of neutral in terms of judgment. Yeah. So. Great. So anyway, on that note, I was just checking that there weren't any more questions. So on that note, I will be back tomorrow at the same time. God knows what they're doing upstairs. I think they're playing blades or something. Anyway, so yeah, I will be back at this time tomorrow. Happy splurging. The last 2 days, so tomorrow there's a new splurge, and it's going to be a bit, I don't know, is it? Yeah, it's day 9. So tomorrow it's going to be a bit different, because we're doing what's called a countdown splurge, which is really pushing the speed button. Yeah, really kind of upping how fast you're going. So that produces different results as well. So yeah, see if you can really accelerate towards the end of this process, and get as many splurges done as possible. Even if all of them are rubbish, you will learn a lot from going super fast. So it's been wonderful to hang out with everyone as usual. I will see you again tomorrow, and all that's left to say is stay safe, stay healthy, stay sanitized, and onwards and upwards.